Wonderful. I am so excited that we have here today with us Jenny Wu. Jenny Wu is currently a doctoral candidate at University of California, Irvine. She also graduated from the Mind-Brain Education program at Harvard Graduate School of Education in 2018. I'd like to share how Jenny and I met. It was a cold January day, and I was sitting near the fire in Gutman Cafe and Gutman Library at the Ed School. And somebody approached me and she sat down beside me and she asked me if we could have a chat. And the conversation evolved into some of the challenges that we might be facing as graduate students and mothers of multiple children with multiple needs. And it seemed to me like Jenny was trying to solve a problem. And I'll share my perception of that problem was that we have lots of demands on our time. Our children often end up in front of the screens for far too long, and that creates a great sense of guilt and pressure on us as families. And so that was my remembering of when Jenny and I met in January 2018. At that point, Jenny's idea was just an idea. That's all it was. We then entered into a class called Shining on Camera, where we learned how to pitch our ideas. Jenny and I recorded a podcast together on equity, and that was included in one of the cards of the 52 essential conversations, which she'll be sharing later today. Fast forward, May 2021, and Jenny has sold over 30,000 decks of her cards and has had some huge impact and is writing her doctoral dissertation on social emotional learning in this context. So I will pass it over to Jenny to introduce herself in any way that I may have missed. Thank you all so much for being here.
Great, thank you so much, Andrea, and thank you all for this opportunity to be here. Can everybody see my screen? Feel free to type it into the chat if you can. Okay. So let's go ahead and get started. Today, I'd like to share with you the social emotional learning tools that I've developed and the research that really came along with it. And, by now you've heard of the term social emotional learning. And to be honest, it has really become that buzzword, right, that we hear these days all the time, especially in education. But what does it really mean? And more importantly, how does it really look in action when it's done effectively, right? And in my research, what I found is that one of the biggest constraints for social emotional learning is that it only happens in one setting, right? Whether it's in school and community, maybe in home, and there is always a certain sort of manual, budget, training, all that stuff involved, right? So the problem I've been trying to deal with is how can we make this type of learning accessible for everyone? And that happens anytime, anywhere, across all settings, because we know that repeated opportunities to practice and this consistency in supporting our students, right, our children, is really how they learn best, how they develop, right? So how can we ensure alignment and partnership across various contexts in our children's life, right? And honestly, as a researcher, even in research, I see that there's such an over focus on clinical diagnoses of psychopathology, and there's just such a deficit mindset in, asking about our children or even families in terms of what is wrong with you, right? And it just like, how can, as a parent of 3 elementary age children, 2 of which are twins, and they were born premature, 1 weighed less than 3 pounds, I've had my share of just all the different meetings, the therapy, and of course the worries, right, on an ongoing basis. So how can we advocate for learning and development and supporting our children with a strength-based lens, and really honoring our children for who they are, right, and provide them with the necessary support for them to thrive as happy and confident adults? So that's what I'll be discussing as well. And, there's also, it's not, social emotional learning is not just, well, here's a curriculum, you dump it on and you make it work, right? There's a lot of prerequisites involved in that. For example, what if there hasn't been that culture of social emotional learning, right? How can we cultivate this type of culture of understanding, support, and even confidence to do it, right? And so I'm going to share also with you my research based off of positive development relationships, right? How can we help our children to find their advocates, their champions? And how do we do that to ensure that the conversation is inclusive and supportive? And lastly, I mean, as Andrea has started with this meeting, right? We've dealt with a lot during the pandemic, whether you're a parent, your service provider, we at personally. So as adults, right? How can we get the type of skills to help us be effective in our roles and being a human being, right? So how do we cope with our anger, our guilt, our stress, our anxiety, and honestly, burnout, right? So I'll be talking to you about the 52 essential coping skills and really helping us to help our children and becoming better role models and achieving that well-being. So I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir a bit. So I'm not going to, talk about the benefits of social emotional learning, but instead I'm going to skip direct into how do we make it happen and how do we make it happen today, make it happen now. So in terms of the research that really informed my development of these anytime, anywhere tools stemmed from a 2018 research out of MIT with Harvard. And it was really, for those of you, maybe you've heard 30 million word gap, right? Where we found that children from underserved families show about a 30 million word gap, right? By the age of 3, that explains, or has some relationship correlation with performance on vocabulary, language development, and reading comprehension. So so now then, the recommendation is read to your children. Let's get the books in, those are what our parents are receiving. But this research has found that it's actually the conversations between an adult and child that appears to change the child's brain. And it's this back and forth conversation that is actually more critical to language development than that word gap had originally thought. And, just finding that, right, it's sort of, it's common sense in some sense, right? If you're just dumping words by reading to children versus really connecting with them. And additional neuroscience research has found that, when you engage in these type of conversations, you not only change the children's brain, you change your own brain. And it spurs the production of oxytocin, which is, what I call the love or the bonding hormone. And that's a huge positive protector against stress, right? Things around that. And it actually also activates networks in our prefrontal cortex for our children, which is related to impulse control, working memory, and things around that. So that really made me get into the conversation. Well, how can we embed this culture of having a meaningful conversations, right? But around the topic that are meaningful and bite-sized, that is doable and actionable and not intimidating. So I created this, ended up getting featured by the Harvard Gazette on the Harvard homepage for Graduate School of Education. And I wanted to show you my framework. So this framework refers from CASEL. So some of you might have heard CASEL, which is a national organization that really sets some of the standards informed by research for social emotional learning. And they have 5 competencies, right? Self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making, which is what you see here. But in my research, I realized that, in order to be self-aware, to understand your identities, right? And to be socially aware, to have these meaningful, equitable relationships, inclusive relationships, how can you not talk about diversity, equity, inclusion, right? It is so integrated and embedded, yet as through my field research and speaking with adults, whether families, educators, right? We lack the confidence to do that because we feel like we don't have the skills and the language to be able to do that. So we shy away from that, right? And not doing anything, as we know, is not the right thing to do, right? In itself is something else. So I integrated a new competency, which is the diversity, equity, inclusion. And I think ecologically, this really wraps around everything. So here is what you see, and these cute little characters are actually having to do with my cards, because I decided that it was going to be a traditional set of cards, kind of like playing cards, right? You have the ace, the all the numbers, and then you have the hearts, diamonds, spade, clubs, right? So make it something that people are comfortable with. People are already using it, right? They may be using it for something else, but if you can embed and repurpose in such a way that they are receiving it, welcoming it, and they're like, I know this, right? Then it's so seamlessly integrated into their everyday experiences. So I integrated these elements and using the sort of child-friendly, graphically friendly characters. So each of the cards where you see on the left is a sample of a card, and it's coded in a way that you can guide yourself through working on this. You don't need that big old manual, right? You don't need to, let me take a month off just to read up on this to make sure, right, I'm saying things right. And so, and the way these works, so these are cascading skills, meaning the first Ace 2, 3, 4 are the easiest skills, and skills mapped by self-awareness, which is the heart icon, or self-management, which is what you see here, the cute little diamond doing a meditation exercise. So the easiest one, for example, in self-awareness is recognizing emotions. I mean, let me not so right, but the first one, and it goes all the way down to implicit bias. So each of the cards are coded in such a way that you pick up a card by looking at the number and the icon and maybe the special symbol, you automatically know what you're doing. So it's a nice way of curating right off the bat. And I'll show you some research on how people are actually using it. So these are, so the conversations deck, the top one is more gamified examples. There's some games around that, but it's easier question to get the conversations flowing. And the bottom one is more philosophical. So, for example, I have one on privilege, right? And it asks, what's the difference between privilege and luck, right? So it gets a little bit, get you to really think. And you can see that as an adult, you need to self-reflect as well. And that's where the role modeling comes in. Typically, I ask the oldest player goes first, right? It's a way for you to just take some time off and reflect, for the parents to reflect, right? And as in that process of reflecting, you're role modeling for your children. So you're de-stressing yourself and you're role modeling. And so I did a research on this. So as Andrea said, it did end up selling a whole lot, thanks to being featured by Castle and various large organizations. And I looked at about across 13-ish states and 10 plus countries and how people are using it. And I categorized the type of users in 3 groups, which are the parents only, right? Those who have not had any background in social emotional learning. And then, of course, you have the educators, right? I know this, I've heard about this, maybe I got a PD on it. And then the intersection of the two, which are the parents who are also the educators. They have students in school and children at home. And the reason for that is because in a lot of my field interviews, I realized that educators who have kids end up always talking about how they're using it at school and they're benefiting at home. So I wanted to see, what's the skill set gap? Is this doable for a first-time user with no background and how to build supportive relationship, nor has had any type of conversation like that? So what you see is here, and looking at their user behaviors in terms of how long they use it for, how often, what they use it for, right? And what age group they use it for. So this is downloadable on my website. Feel free to, browse it, but I'm gonna highlight just in terms of user behaviors and settings. So what you see here is school settings. So these are real people using the cards. And I speak at a lot of new teacher training, MAT type of credentialing programs. And I have to say, I guess I'm not surprised anymore, but initially I was really surprised how how so many teachers said, you know, hey, the work is already done for me. I don't need to think of anything. I don't need to create it. I just need to curate it and pull out and align it with my lesson. And even experienced clinical psychologists have told me this in school settings where she's like, oh, you know, some days in the morning circle time, I just can't think of anything. And your cards are wonderful because it just gives me this platform and this thing to talk about. And similarly, what I've noticed for SLPs, our language therapy pathologist, is that they use it in the context of both for assessment and for practice. And interestingly, the cards is a way where you can not only do it to practice, but in the process of practicing, you get tremendous insight in where your students are. And I've, you know, sat in on some of these one-on-one or small group-based therapies, and it's really incredible some of the insights that are generated out of students' responses, both in terms of helping educators understand their personal context. Like, we didn't even know this child has a dad who was dealing with cancer this whole entire time, right? Until then. And so he said it so casually, we're like, what, like, we wish we knew about this. So yeah, so, and also, you know, let's see, another example. So this is a district SEL coordinator who's also a parent. She's out of Connecticut, large school district. And she said at work, she uses it to provide PD model lessons, after school workshops, and family engagement events, but she also brings it to her 6-year-old's pajama party. So these are some of the examples for you. And in terms of home and other settings, so interestingly, the way that it is used outside of school settings is very whimsical. That is, if you're in the car waiting for something, right? Waiting before a sporting goods activity on your drive to the school or to a grocery shop, parents just take a card and start talking, right? And the typical at mealtime, you can have it at the desk, right? And it's often those like uncoordinated, whimsical times where the parents are like, oh my God, I can't believe my child's actually blabbing on and talking on instead of saying fine, good, you know, those kind of thing. So they were really surprised by it. And it's interesting that parents did mention that it's not intimidating and anybody could do it here. So that was really promising for me at the time when I was developing it, continue to iterate the content. And in terms of therapy practice for social skills, here's an example of a parent of a high school student. She says, my son has autism and needs practice with two-way communication, conversation with multiple exchanges. I thought I would struggle more with gaining compliance and willingness to practice. You know, it was a long interview, long feedback, but she says it's totally viable and built on just about every card in the deck with ease. So as you can see, my goal is really to have this transcend across many different contexts. And another example is with United Way. I did a partnership of Broward County. They had a mini documentary screening around unique mental health needs of Black men. And so then they had a panel, it was called Faded Conversations. And then at the end, we gave the decks away to continue these types of conversations outside of that event. I've also done events in terms of Boys and Girls Club, where, you know, usually it's parents' night out, right? You drop the kids off, but we also did parents' night in, where kids play, watch a movie, while the parents really sit down and discuss some of these things around social emotional development of our children. So I apologize. I know this is a lot to talk about. And Cambria, I do see your question. So let me go ahead and actually answer it in the context of this, right? The question is, do you see a difference in how receptive kids are to answering the questions by age? Yes. How old do you think a child should be able to use these questions? Yes. So it really depends. I know you hate that word, right? But let me elaborate why. So the way the cards are categorized, right? The easiest concepts are the aces, because I found little kids like to be powerful. They want to start with the ace, right? So in recognizing emotions, the first question isn't really a question. It's more gamified. It's make 5 faces and let the other people guess what emotion you're expressing in the face, right? So as you can see, by using it more gamified way, and we also hack like the headbands game, different things, it gets the kids to think it's fun, it's playing. So in that case, interestingly, younger children, and I would recommend preschool, lower elementary is really the youngest and up, right? And they should work on the A's 2, 3, 4 card and start with the self-awareness before you even talk about responsible decision-making or relationship skills, right? So it's really coded in a way as such. And one of my background is I've worked as a school administrator at a network of Montessori schools. And so that pedagogical Montessorian, which was developed for children with special needs, is very much deeply ingrained on me. I wanted to empower the adults and the children to be able to really direct their learning and how they learn. Of course, I also get questions in terms of teenagers, right? Compliance, usually, they don't want to do this stuff, right? But I've been actually pleasantly surprised that they are dying to talk about some of these topics. And if you open that entry, it's absolutely magical. And so, for example, what you see on the screen is, I'm going to skip to peer mentorship and training and restorative practices. These two pictures are done on campuses for college. So incoming freshmen, right? Seniors, graduated seniors. So college, what is it called? Orientation activities where students get to know each other, right? So in the case, it's not just adult to child, it's peer to peer. And conversations flow more at an older age when you can facilitate that safe, brave space for peers to really understand and exchange who they are and their thoughts. And one of the feedbacks I got from the orientation was, these are not like whatever everyday question, like, how are you? What's your major? That kind of thing that really gets you to who the other person is in front of you, but in expressing yourself, it allows you to really self-reflect and hear what you're saying, right? So this, as I mentioned, also used in, interestingly, SPED and gifted education, right? We could all need some of this at various school districts, dinner table, class station activities where you can self-reflective prompts, right? Morning advisory and things around that. So feel free to keep asking questions. And if I happen to skip it, Andrea or whoever, feel free to slow me down and, make sure I answer everybody's questions. So I wanted to give you some real people or schools, organizations using it, right? So the first one at a Title I school was a family workshop that I had done for the school. And in this case, sometimes we tend to only invite parents only, right? And who has childcare, right? And you try to entice them. And, so in this case, we invited the whole family, including siblings. We had pizza and all kinds of stuff. And so this is one of the comments from the counselor. And he mentioned, it's such a simple way of bringing families together, even including divorced parents, right? When you're co-parenting or really divorced, maybe not on talking terms, but they were actually sitting down next to each other with their children and playing a fun game. And so for him, that was, they've been trying to do this, and it was really interesting for him to witness that. So for families to reconnect, it was really heartwarming. And so then he talks about in different places. The second one, actually here in Massachusetts, with Milton, where a school principal really saw the benefits, but she didn't, she saw the benefit, didn't do as much, but it was actually the teachers. And I see this in a lot of cases, teachers or a group of SLPs, they come together, they submit a grant, or they, find ways into stocking the classrooms with a deck of cards, each to be able to utilize these conversations seamlessly, whether it's during a lesson or for little kids, what I've seen is transitions. So a transition point in between the lessons. Okay, so knowing all these things, I've continued to create support and resources, because at the end of the day, how do you again start the conversation? And once you have this card, you start it, how do you continue it, right? So these are free podcast lessons that I've done with seasoned and experienced, just most importantly, passionate educators and researchers around each of the topics of my cards. I'm still working on all the topics. There are 52 topics, but I have quite a number of them. And these are between 15, 30 minutes long. My criteria for, there's a lot of Harvard grads here since I was physically there. But I was like, when they first got in, I said, everything you say needs to be in layman's terms. None of those jargon and tips. I want tips, but your tips need to be actionable, doable, like realistic, right? And culturally responsive. So I was like, I need your personal stories, your anecdotes, and your tips. None of those fluff. Let's get down to business and really help parents and educators to do this, right? So these podcasts are shared as lessons or in parent newsletters as a resource. Like, this week our theme is on perspective taking. Here's what a neuroscientist said, but in a very, practical term. So these are the ways. So Bonnie, thank you for answering the question about the distinction between the various decks. I'm about to shift gears to the other deck. So thank you. So I just want to also emphasize, I'm huge on culture of inclusion and compassion. And so there are highlighted podcasts around very much special education, language impairment, maybe the implications and the prevalence of misdiagnoses for language impairment, especially for those who are English language learners, right? How do you advocate, right, for your students, for your children? What's the difference between race and privilege, model minority, and gender expression? So these are the confidence boosting resources for both educators and parents to be able to have these important conversations. So now shifting gear, Bonnie, so that was the conversation, right? In order to have conversations, you need to be able to open up, right? To open up, you need to have that trust there. And so, Rita Pearson, every child deserves a champion, right? But how does that child get the champion? How do you be the champion, right? And how do you seek for more champions? And so that's where the relationship cards come in. It's all about building champions and relationship and supportive trust. And so this one, using very similar icons, and it kind of correlates, and you can play it interchangeably with the yellow 52 essential conversations cards. So again, self-awareness, self-management, right? But this time we focus on relationship competencies. So nurture, right? We start with nurturing. Show me that you care, that we're on the same team, that you are really listening, and you are someone that I can trust, right? That's huge. And then you flex, right? Meaning that let's talk about your goals. Let's talk about what you're interested in. Let's talk about what makes you you, right? And then how do I best support you? Not supporting you in the way that I think it should be done, right? But what do you really need? And then partner, besides, taking this role where, especially with adolescent, like, how can I support you, or talking, lecturing, it's how can we partner, right? How can we collaborate? Because adolescent development, they want to be respected, right? And then I also have competencies around mentorship. So for those, as a first generation, so I'm the first one to graduate a four-year college out of all of my families. I'm an immigrant. And I grew up with my grandparents between 5 and 10 years old. So having that mentor, having that champion, right? And being able to ask for help is huge. And so this is an area very passionate for me. And I wanted to give voices to those who need to ask for help but don't know how, right? And also a platform for those who want to give help, but sometimes you don't know how either, or how to ask what you can help. And lastly, conflict mediator. So this is conflict resolution, right? Within a household, within a team, an organization. And in my past, I've worked as a human capital consultant for various corporations and as an executive coach in the Silicon Valley. So I also come from a nonprofit, but also corporate and school background. And I just see these sets of skills lacking over and over, no matter what context you are. And so I'll give you some case studies to show you what I mean. But first I want to show you, this is so heartwarming. So Michelle reached out to me. She's presenting actually this card that I just showed you at a conference coming up on autism. And she was like, giving me some feedback, and I was like, can you, I'm actually presenting. Can you put this on video? So I'm just with no more saying, I'm just going to show you what she says. Okay. All right. Type into chat if you can't hear. And in the meantime, if you do have questions, feel free to type into the chat as well. Let me go ahead and get started.
Hi, my name is Michelle Sokol, and I am an autistic adult, parent, and partner in a neurodivergent relationship. And I wanted to just say how amazing these 52 essential relationships cards are. I am a professional librarian and teacher, and I was like searching.
Oops. Did it stop? Sorry.
Hi.
Oh no.
My name.
Sorry about that.
And partner in a neurodivergent relationship. And I wanted to just say how amazing these 52 essential relationships cards are. I am a professional librarian and teacher, and I was like searching the internet for what is the best of the best I can find that is a kinesthetic and visual resource to use to help build relationships, not just between adult partners in a relationship, but also with parent-child building, with children and building their own. Just where are some really good scripted communication visual resources that can really help to scaffold these essential skills? So I was so excited when I found these 52 essential relationships cards. As far as the comparison to what's on the available market, they are like way superior. For the price, comfortable in
let me see.
What?
Let me go ahead and it's a long one. So let me see if I can find some examples where
investment for anybody who's wondering.
What's it two? Let's go here. Okay.
A card, any card. Which card do you like? And I'll ask my husband, or maybe my children will grab it. And so we grab whatever card suits our fancy in that moment. And this is the one I'll grab right now, which is include. What does it mean having, or what does having a voice mean to you? Name the ways that you would like to be involved in the decisions that affect you. And I love this because if one of the questions is a little difficult to answer, or you can chew on one question if the other one is easier, you have the ability to process over this complex topic, but this is a really essential conversation to have. This is all about inclusion and advocacy, and that's something I'm really passionate about. I am teaching my children and overall trying to be a role modelship for inspiration to give a voice to those who have been traditionally underserved. So I really love these cards. Another way that I like to use them was using the emotional intelligence, the EQ quiz on the website. I thought that was so clever. And it wasn't an intense quiz to go through, but I thought the results were very helpful. So for me, I had superior communication ability, but my reactivity was rated at 2. So I am looking forward to working more with the cards that are prescribed from those results. And it will say very clearly, look at these cards. Or another way we like to use the cards is kind of almost like the cheaters method, right? But you could actually sit and take the time to read through the cards, and you can set up an order to them so you have a scripted conversation. Or honestly, if I were an employer and I was having an interview with an employee, I might even like pull these cards out and, in the middle of the interview, just see how they react, see what their off the cusp reaction is, because these cards go into a deeper complexity of communication, of conversation that naturally, organically happens. And so these conversations are really essential. They're really important, and we can't survive as a race without them. I think these are really important. So I love.
Okay, so yeah, she's so sweet, so sweet. I was like, you sure to send me something? I love to feature you. And then she sent me this really extensive. So I hope you got something out of it. I certainly always stay connected to our users and really understanding what the needs are that we're trying to solve. So another case study, right? So I know Michelle, interesting, mentioned interviews for organizations. So I've actually been engaged by various organizations and institutions, mostly nonprofit, around facilitating cross-team, culture building type of professional development for staff. So this is one that you saw that I had done for Center for Educational Partnership, and she had so many teams. I had the post survey looking at how employee engagement and how we're operating as an organization. And we were able to only use 3 to 4 cards to have a whole, I think it was an hour and a half or 2-hour staff PD, really, but focused around what everybody's working with and how the pieces connect. So she mentioned that it's a powerful tool to initiate thoughts and discussion to our deeply held values and motivations. And this is this deceptively simple and unique product facilitated staff development that engaged the entire team and led to new breakthroughs to propel our work forward and connect as a team. So there are a lot of practical applications to really help families, organizations, team reconnect with their why. And as I mentioned, this is very much international. So I have organizations in Australia with very similar, right, and vision, doing the very same things, utilizing Google. The latest is that a school-wide initiative out of Pennsylvania, one of the largest online charter schools, just engaged with me. And what they're doing is they are sending, I think they have like 11,000 students, and they're sending those families each a deck of 52 essential relationship cards by June the 14th. So they felt like this deck of cards was the easiest out of the 3 cards to get that conversation initiated, foster family relationships. And then what they did is they also, all the teachers are working with the previous card you saw, the 52 essential conversations, as well as the coping skill that I'll be discussing into their school-wide initiative and curriculum for this fall. Okay, so this is examples, and Cambria, happy to connect with you. If you have questions and different, utility of the cards. Okay, so the last one I wanted to share with you is the coping skills. And this one was really inspired by research on emotional resilience. And this was done during COVID-19. A lot has happened, and we need all the support we can in terms of coping with the big emotions on a daily basis and coping with the chronic stress from trauma, adversity. Cindy, I get so many requests on Spanish. We are starting to translate. It is a slow process because I want to ensure that it is culturally sensitive, right? You can't just translate it straight over. And so it is in the works, as well as other language. So this was inspired by my course, a university level course that I taught called Emotional Intelligence for School and Job Success. And it's a course that I taught all throughout 2020, just before the pandemic social distancing measures and well during. So out of the course, and just with all of my students, countless students, and interacting with them in person or online, it has really inspired me to understand what the gaps are in students transitioning into college, and also when they share about their upbringing, right, their belief systems and attitudes that are informed by their social cultural backgrounds, right? What are the support that we can provide? So this is an example. We use these cards online as part of the curriculum, and I ask them to not only use it for self-reflective exercises, but really to use it in their own context. I tell them that you are writing the syllabus of your life. The assignments are about you, and it's about you using it with the loved ones, the friends, the people that matter to you, and use it in such way to for your needs. So let's see. So for example, I also did a research study. It's a mixed method of qualitative and quantitative. What you see is the quantitative data. And in this one, we are really looking at assessing emotion scale, which is an emotional intelligence scale that social emotional learning really were grounded from the theoretical basis of emotional intelligence, and looking at the competencies of within your intrapersonal and interpersonal skills. And then we also look at coping, adaptive, maladaptive, their college well-being. And what's not on here, I also study sense of belonging. That's really important. So how do your sense of belonging look, and what are the antecedents of sense of belonging? Because sense of belonging look very differently across different cultures. And one of the things that we don't take account from is familial influence. Okay, so what you see here, these are effect sizes. And typically in social sciences, if you get like an effect size of 0.2, 0.25, 0.3 is like really good, pretty good. But I was able to find huge effect sizes, which means that there is incredible significant improvement in some of these competencies related to being able to manage your own emotion, labeling, expressing, articulating your emotions, and coping adaptively. Another thing I found is I also study mental health stigma, right? So what is the belief system you have and how you should be expressing your emotions and how the public should be? So I'm happy to share more research if you like, but it's always good if we hear from real people, because that's the one that really matters. So I'll just share with you.
Hi, my name is Rochelle, and I am a full-time science major, and I'm also a full-time mom, and I work full-time. This quarter, I took Jenny's emotional intelligence course, and it by far has been the most rewarding class I've taken in all of my upper division courses. Not only was I able to get to know myself better through my emotions, learn better coping skills by reflecting on past experiences, but most importantly, it's helped me become a better parent. I've been able to relay the emotional intelligence information to my kids and help them have better building blocks to have a better foundation of emotional intelligence. So as a mom, a full-time student, and someone who works full-time, I found this course to be beneficial in my education, my professional career, and my personal life.
Okay, let's see. I think I have another.
Hi, my name's Rochelle. And hi, my name's.
Okay, here's Susie.
Okay. Hi, my name is Cecilia DeFortune. I'm a second-year criminology law and society major, and I was originally introduced to this class by one of my coworkers, actually. His name was Michael. He took this class, and when he was talking about it, I was very interested because I have trouble, me personally, I have trouble connecting with my emotions and like figuring out what or how to get in tune with my emotions. So I thought that this class would be of good help for me personally. I thought this class really helped with a lot of self-reflection and personal growth, especially since I sometimes feel lost in my personal identity. So I feel like this class definitely helped me kind of rediscover myself and figure out what works for me and methods that I could implement into my life in order to help my own personal emotional intelligence. So I really value this class, and I appreciate the professor, Jenny, who really described a lot of different methods and techniques of connecting with my emotions or like with emotions. So I really thought that this class was really interesting. All the work, it was very tolerable. It was really like easy, and it helps deepening your personality, and it helps to further discover yourself. And yeah, I really like this class.
That's so sweet. Let's see. Okay. So, my mission is really making things into bite-sized, easy to do, actionable now, right? And accessibly, adaptively for everyone. So this online course curriculum, I'm in the process of revamping some to make it sort of, again, bite-sized, easy to digest. And so what you see here is what's going to be available very soon. It's consists of 6 modules. First one, here's an example, emotion intelligence overview. So we debunk these myths about emotions. We talk about the different features of emotion and really the sort of the neuroscience, like what happens in your brain, right? When you experience emotion, what does that mean, right? So really kind of decoding these and encouraging students to understand that emotions are data, right? And data tell you insights. So how do you decipher and generate new insights about yourself and what motivates you and your needs and values? So self-awareness, so we go into each of the competencies. There's exercises, self-assessment to really understand where you are at. And things around that. So this will be available on the website, mindbrainparenting.org. Available for everybody, not just university level students. And I would say these are really good for high school students, whether it's in the classroom, if it's you want to do it module by module, sharing it, right? Or on their own as a summer camp type of resource, things around that. And of course, students transitioning into college, that is huge. I am currently in talks of potentially partnering with, for this program here out in California with the University of California campus-wide system, because there's a state-funded sort of program around early academic success and working with students from underrepresented communities, high school seniors and high schools, and really helping them to transition successfully into college to matriculate. Okay, so me blabbing on so much. The last thing I want to share with you is, in case you're interested in what other students have to say, there are more testimonials available from so many different aspects and perspectives. So now I thought it might be good to experience this, right? So I have like 4 different cards, and these are actually cards from a keynote that I last week for Reclaim Mental Health conference. And so if everybody's interested, then we can go ahead and go into breakout rooms. Maybe we have groups of 4 or 5 different groups, and then we can talk about these things. So what do you think, Andrea? Should we do, I have like 4, but we probably only have time for 1. And then I want to make sure I get to questions. So Andrea, what do you think?
I think it's just 19 of us here now. If folks, because we are at 5 minutes before 2, and I want to honor everyone's time. I think we had planned until about 2. So I think if folks are able to stay on the call, then it makes sense to do the breakout rooms. If everyone's kind of thinking, I need to be done at 2. So if you can just let us know by kind of in the chat here. If breakout, okay, so it looks like people kind of need to jump off at 2. So is everyone comfortable if we just kind of experiment with this here in the main room? If you'd like to engage, you may in the chat. Awesome. So yeah, I'm hearing that folks need to be off at 2.
Okay, yeah, that sounds great. And I also want to get to questions. So I'm going to prioritize maybe questions. So if you do have one, definitely put it in here. And Bonnie, I did share my social media handles for Facebook and Instagram. And to be honest, I'm going to get better with social media. I just haven't been as active. So, but there are actually resources in Mind Brain Parenting and Mind Brain Emotion. So feel free to, follow both, and I promise I'm going to get better on that. Okay, so how to get unstuck. This is one where what I've found is, when we get into self-reflection, especially for students, sometimes even for us adults, we mistake it when we go too far, and that's rumination, right? Which is repetitive and reactive thought patterns where there really isn't much of a closure and action attached to it, right? We think we're processing, we're getting more clarity, but at the end of the day, we're viscerally experiencing something and not quite doing anything, right? So this is what's, what memory, you don't have to actually, this is such a personal thing, right? Coping skills. So just think to yourself, right? What memory or emotion are you dwelling on, right? And there's a lot of research around positive emotionality, how that serves as such a protective buffer into the negativity, the negative emotion that we experience. And especially during the pandemic, you know, there's no way you can avoid negative emotions altogether. And by avoiding negative emotions, it does not say that you will get positive emotions, right? So I teach a lot about these courses, but one of the mechanisms of being able to catch yourself from dwelling too long, ruminating, and just kind of swimming in that sea of despair, helplessness, right? You identify a positive emotion that is going to motivate you to change, right? Do something about it or to accept your situation. So yeah, Andrea, I know we're running out of time, so maybe I'll just go to a second one just to give you more previews of the cards. So this is a huge one, celebrate imperfection. I think we carry a lot of guilt and not good enough and could be doing more, could be doing better. And so I do this a lot with students and, you know, actually celebrating your quirks, celebrating who you are and yourselves and maybe in other people, right, that you would normally have a pet peeve with. And we're looking at a personal struggle or a flaw and then turning it into something that spreads inspiration. And I talk a lot about purpose and resilience, right? Finding your purpose. And a lot of the times finding your purpose first comes from finding your struggle, right? And your needs and having inspiration from that and helping yourselves by helping others or to help others, you know, so there's a huge connection. Let's see. Your inner compass, that is also related to purpose. Especially in the pandemic, I see a lot I see kids just saying that they're tired, you know, they're unmotivated, they're drained. That sluggish is a huge one, you know, or distance, absent. I ask my students a lot about their emotions, and this is a way of keeping that fire going, you know. When you experience depressive symptoms, right? It's another huge thing. Tapping into your inner compass is huge, right? Even taking, as you can see, some of these, like just take a moment, take 1 minute to think the first question, or you can really write in your journal, right? So the utility of it is really versatile in case of what you want to do. And we have 3 minutes left. So self-compassion is another one. What do you need right now? And a lot of the times, especially as parents, as a mom of 3, you know, we don't think about our own needs, but yet in the back of our heads, we wish, right, if somebody had said something to us about our needs or do something for us, right? But if that doesn't happen, then, you know, there's a lot of mixed emotions, right, of resentment, and maybe guilt for even feeling resentment. And I have my TEDx talk very much around motherhood. And the title is called How to Feel Self-ish, so self-ish, without feeling selfish. So this is about self-compassion, right? Write these well wishes for yourself. Instead of waiting around, right? Waiting for that sign, waiting for approval, write it for yourself and wish it for yourself. So these are really the 4 cards. And I just want to share with you some resources. Things I didn't talk about, for example, there are quizzes available, and they're fun quizzes. They're fun quizzes to help you understand where you are on your emotional intelligence, what type of coping strategies you've been relying on, maybe expanding your repertoire of coping toolbox. And also I have like fun quizzes around neuromyth, right? Neuromyth and how we learn, how we develop, how the brain works. That's something I see a lot in educators and parents alike, in terms of debunking some of these misconceptions of how we learn and how we function. But that's all I wanted to share. Here's my email. If you have any questions, you can find all the resources on the website here, mindbrainparenting.org.
Thank you so much, Jenny. Thank you so much to everyone that's here. I want to really honor our time. I know I have a lot of questions bubbling up for me that I'd like to follow up with Jenny about. So we will be sending the recording to all of you who are here, and everyone who registered and wasn't able to attend. So spread the word. This is working. It's impactful, and I can't wait for the research to deepen. I know one of my burning questions is, to what extent can this be useful in work around diversity, equity, and inclusion, and active anti-racism work? So thank you so much, Jenny. It's been a pleasure, and drop any final questions in the chat. I'll hang on here for a couple of minutes.
Yeah, thank you so much again for having me. Feel free to, I'll also stick around so if you have any questions, but have a lovely day.
Wonderful. We're getting, the chat is really active with lots of love for you, Jenny. Thank you. The decks have been ordered. Have a great rest of your day.
Have a good day, everyone. Sorry I have to jump off.
No problem. Amazing resources. Full of love here for Jenny. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Bonnie.
Yeah, Bonnie.
So this was wonderful. I really appreciated learning about these tools, and you know, I can think about different ways that I'd like to share it. And so what you know, so what I'm thinking about is, how do I consolidate all the things that we talked about in a way that I can kind of distribute through my networks? And that's why I was asking about, you know, your social media handles and stuff. So, you know, anything that just like comes across as, you know, easily scannable. And I know there's so much rich information here. It's sometimes hard to consolidate, but I just would appreciate any packaging that you could offer to us so that we can just kind of send it off to, you know, the families that we work with that we think would be interested, or people that we know in our networks.
Yeah. Thank you for this wonderful question. And thank you, Bonnie, for the social media recommendation. Yes, definitely. So I do have several PDFs ranging from one pager to a few pages and highlighting the resources from the decks to the courses that I can go ahead and send over. And thank you so much for offering to spread the word. To be honest, you know, we've really been relying on word of mouth, and it still baffles me that it has spread to all 50 states and 50 plus countries just organically. But I do recognize that, you know, there's such a need, and sometimes people just don't know what's out there, and especially those that are well researched and evidence-based. So yeah, thank you. I'll definitely send those over.
Yeah, you know, in all fairness, you know, it's best if you're promoting all the gems here, because you know it so well. So that's why it would just be helpful for anything that you could offer us that we can send along.
Yeah, and you know, I actually post even like parent engagement workshops I've done at schools, as well as webinars I've done at universities talking about children's social and emotional development from a very science standpoint, because that's free. So feel free to send the link and have people watch.
Good. Okay.
This hour-long.
That's on the website.
Yeah, because you know, I see a lot of parents, they think that they're getting this ready-made kid who's all fully developed, right? But it takes time all the way to the mid-20s. So those are freely accessible on the website. So I can send the links.
Great. Okay, thanks. I'll look for it. And I appreciate anything you can send us.
Thank you so much, Bonnie. Your question also makes me think about equity, like with a lot of things. So one of our questions is, how can we get these decks into the hands of as many families as possible, and that it's not on the families to come up with the $25 for the deck, right? That it should be perhaps could be something that's included in, you know, district-wide or community center, like summer wellness packs, to the extent that, you know, families would have access to these without having any barriers at all. And then of course, extending beyond that, how we might, you know, use this, you know, capacity building in order to facilitate better relationships between schools and families.
Are the cards available at libraries? I mean, I know we haven't been in libraries in a long time, but that would strike me as a place that hopefully we can get back to, and that having them available there would be helpful.
Yeah, so I do have librarians purchasing these. More, again, I have not just been spreading the word so much, right? So they find me through references and organic search. And so, yeah, the family resource centers and libraries will be a great way of getting them. Yeah, and on your question, Andrea, I do have schools, public schools for the summer. They have these summer sessions where they have bought basically enough for all the attendees and their families. So as a way of coming to the summer camp, you get this card.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Those of you who hung on with us here to the end. Any final burning questions? I know Sarah and I have a 2:30, so we'll be jumping.
Yeah, these are just great. I've been waiting. I've been waiting to see these, Jenny. You did a fantastic job. I think that you really resonated with people from all areas, all different ages, and it's just a very useful tool. And I'm just excited to learn more. And the fact that, you know, you have a little bit of UC Irvine represented in there, UC Riverside.
Oh, very cool. Awesome.
So yeah, I mean, this is really great. This is fantastic. Thank you.
You also have in common that you're both dissertating right now. So
yes.
There's another bond.
I have to get going. It was nice to be here today with all of you. Thank you again, Jenny. Take care. Good luck.
Thank you so much, Bonnie.
Bye.
And this is very exciting that it has just caught fire, you know, and this is word of mouth. I mean, this is like without a campaign. That's fantastic. Congratulations.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much, Sarah. You know how it is. I can't wait to be done with my dissertation, right? Then you can really go full force.
Well, I just got my my dissertation proposal feed forward back right now, and I just got the email that my dissertation proposal defense is now the 17th of June, and I'm just like, oh my gosh.
That's exciting. You can do
exciting.
It.
One more year.
Oh, those milestones. Oh my gosh.
Jenny, this was awesome. Oh shoot, I've been recording this whole time.
That's okay.
I think you can always